I suppose the most popular flower of all is the rose. So much has been written about it, it seems superfluous to extol its virtues. But to set the hallmark on the culture of the Queen of the Garden, what better authority than Pat Dixon, who in recent years has raised many new and widely grown varieties?
Let us imagine that you have decided to plant a bed of roses. You have chosen a position which is well drained, not too drafty, nor shaded by trees or overcrowded by other plants. Roses like sunshine and warmth, but are adaptable and will grow in some rather exposed places. Climbers and ramblers will give their best when facing south. Some varieties will give satisfaction even on a north wall. Here care should be taken when selecting the position to ensure that the foundations of the wall does not provide too much drainage, as the trees will suffer from lack of water.
How do you set about the task of getting the ground ready for roses?
Preparation of the beds before planting is perhaps the most important operation and the secret of successful rose growing. Remember at the outset that the rose, in a year or so's time, is going to be receiving a lot of its nourishment from 2 feet or even deeper down. It is therefore necessary to work the ground to a sufficient depth. Certainly 2 feet will not be too deep. If grassland has been broken for the first time, prepare beds by double digging, placing the grass sod partially uncut at the foot of the bed. If you've been lucky to obtain some farmyard manure, add this to the next layer. And if the ground is heavy or limey, an adequate dressing of peat will help to open it up. Or on the other hand, if the soil is light, an application of peat will retain the moisture. If you have decided to replant roses in an established rose bed, I would strongly advise you to remove the old plants and at the same time take away the top 12 to 18 inches of soil and place it somewhere else in the garden. Find yourself a really good replacement from the vegetable plot or from somewhere where it has not become undernourished.
Having got the ground ready, when do you think is the best time to plant?
In the greater part of our country, roses can be planted during the dormant season, from November until the end of March. November and December being the most popular months, as the tree then gets a rest and is allowed to settle and to make root gradually before the return of warmer weather. Frost and snow is not so likely, and therefore there will be no interruption to planting.
But if there is an interruption to planting, what should be done then?
Roses nowadays are usually trimmed before leaving the nursery and are packed carefully in either lined paper bags or cardboard boxes. In these containers, they will last without harm for periods of up to 4 weeks. At the first opportunity, open the package and examine the trees for broken shoots, removing any with a sharp pair of secateurs. If you are unable to plant immediately, dig a shallow trench somewhere in the garden, cut any ties that may be holding the variety together, and place the trees into the trench. Plant thickly and fill in, making sure that no air holes are left between the trees which would allow frost or wind to get down to the roots. Firm up with the heel of the foot. No harm will come if you buried some of the stems as well as the roots. You may now choose a fine day for planting, and it will give you time to buy bone meal and perhaps some peat. 3 or 4 ounces of bone meal will be enough for 1 tree and about 4 good handfuls of peat. It's a good idea to dip the roots in a bucket of water before planting, particularly if the ground is dry. Dig your hole wide enough to be able to place the roots out in as near the position they were in when they left the ground. 18 to 21 inches should be left between the trees, particularly the floribunda varieties. Climbers and ramblers should be not less than 6 feet apart. After about a fortnight, firm up once again, for by this time the soil will have settled, and you will find that the union, which is the division between the root growth and the top stems, will just be showing above ground level.
So much for planting. Now, how about pruning?
It is difficult to lay down any hard and fast rules, as the method varies according to the variety and the purpose for which they are acquired. Bush roses, first time after planting, should be severely pruned late in February or early March, cutting them back close to a bud, about 4 inches from the ground. Do not delay until the trees are advanced in growth. Established bush roses should have all dead and overcrowded wood cut clean away to the base, keeping the center open to allow for the development of new growth. This leaves only the strongest and youngest growth, and these may be shortened by 1/3 or half their length. It is not desirable to prune good, strong, mature shoots too hard. On poor soil, light pruning is best. Floribunda roses can be treated in the same way as the hybrid tea roses, or if required to grow into large bushes, it will be sufficient to prune to the first good bud below the flower truss.
What difference is there between this pruning and the treatment of ramblers and climbers?
Ramblers and climbers are best dealt with in the autumn, as so much cutting away and thinning out is required, especially with the more vigorous ramblers. Remove all surplus growth, retaining only the strongest and best at or near their full length, as of course they flower on the previous year's wood. Tie up and secure immediately. Cleanliness is important, particularly after pruning. I would recommend that all cutting and foliage be removed from the bed and spray over with a good copper spray. Established beds can be pricked over and manure or compost added.
What feeding do you advise?
For the year immediately following planting, don't apply fertilizer in case it burns the roots. Established roses will benefit from a balanced rose fertilizer in April, followed by an application in May and late June. Feeding after this is not recommended in case young sappy wood is induced to grow in the latter part of the season, and this could be damaged by an early frost.
Is there anything else that should be done in order to get a good show of roses?
You should be prepared to spend a few hours each week during the spring and summer on the care of your roses. Spray fortnightly from the end of April until at least midsummer. Green fly are the most likely insects to give you trouble, and as most insecticides are compatible with fungicides, it may be possible to spray for mildew, black spot, and rust at the same time. Advice should be sought as to the best chemical to use. The Royal National Rose Society will help you with this or other rose problems, so membership is well worthwhile.
Sound advice from the man himself.